When I remember the way you were in high school, it reminds me that I need to be strong now. I was somewhat taken aback when my unlikely high school best friend Jessie, the captain of the Freehold Township High School cheerleading team, and now entertainment professional in Los Angeles, said those words to me. The memories that I have of high school are faded, or at the very least buried under layers of contemporary worries about keeping a small synagogue in Maine vital, and mothering two strong-willed, beautiful girls that are hungry for attention. But when she reminded me of them, I felt this flash of recognition, and so many elements of that period of my life came rushing back. The truth of the matter is, I don't remember my strength. I remember mentors and friends telling me to calm down, smooth the edges, and prepare myself for life's inevitable failures. Jessie and I were members of a youth politics organization called the Junior Statesmen of America, an organization for high school students committed to a life in politics. We both ran for high office in the organization. She lost her election when a completely unprepared boy decided to run against her as a joke. It was shocking because Jessie was, and is, popular, beautiful, hardworking, and deeply competent. I remember being completely aghast when the election results came in. Looking back, she said, she learned something deeply important about being a woman who aspires towards leadership. Never take respect for your achievements for granted. An important and real lesson for a 17-year-old woman. The same year I was running to be governor of the Mid-Atlantic state, the #1 position on the East Coast. My friends and my high school mentor, Mrs. Wallace, Zichrona Livracha, may her memory be for a blessing, sat me down a week before the election to have a difficult talk with me. Rachel, you have no chance of winning. Damien Cortese, a slick and charming boy I ran against, is popular, good-looking, and men like him always win elections. I remember sitting down with all of them on those hard plastic public school chairs and just responding, no, I deserve to win, and I'm going to win. My team and I campaigned hard and didn't take a single vote for granted. I didn't expect to win, but I didn't take losing for granted either. I had won every debate award for the past year and served the previous year as lieutenant governor, and I spent every free moment I had on that campaign. In the end, in a made-for-movie shocking ending, I won the election by a single vote. Jessie said she remembered me winning by a landslide. No, I reminded her, just one vote. As we continued in this conversation, she said, I'll never forget the strength you showed. A 5'2" girl, openly gay when that really wasn't a thing, winning an election over 1,000 high school students. When I doubt myself now, I think about how strong you challenged me to be, and it pushes me to get what I want. Funny, I replied. As I've gotten older, I look back at those memories with a sense of embarrassment. I cannot believe how strident I was, and I look at my softening as evidence of growth. But maybe it isn't. I've let doubts creep in as a way to show that I can hear and internalize critique, and I am more inclined to blame myself when things go wrong. Is that growth, or a sign that I've let my faith in myself and in the ability for things to be fair falter? Memories are strange signposts of our past. They can inspire us to feel a multitude of emotions and inspire us to be better people in the present and the future. They can also mire us in a sense of guilt or stuckness and make the present a state of mourning for what once was. The memory of who I was in high school is based on a single reality, but serves as a radically different touchstone for both Jesse and me. Looking back at those critical moments of the past can lead to divergent futures, making us better, worse, or both, depending on the moment. Zochreinu lechaim, melech hafetz chaim, utkotveinu lesefer hachaim, lemancha Elohim chaim. Remember us for life, King who loves life, and write us in the book of life, for your sake, living God. There are three main themes of the Rosh Hashanah Musaf prayers: sovereignty, memories, and shofarot. As we celebrate a new year, we should ask ourselves, why are we focusing on memory? If we are living in the present and preparing for the future, why should this be a day that also has us looking back? The Jewish tradition has a complicated, or at the very least non-linear, view of time. The Jewish theologian Franz Rosenzweig said that Jewish time is cyclical, revolving around the circular Jewish calendar each year. Each year begins with Rosh Hashanah and ends with Elul. But none of these festivals or months are ever identical. Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Palestine and Jewish mystic, said that our repentance in the present has the ability, quite literally, to change the events of the past. For Rav Kook, actual time travel is possible through repentance. The Jewish journey into the future always calls upon, resurrects, and can even transform key moments in our history. So it isn't surprising that our Shabbat and high holiday liturgy is full of commandments lizkor, to remember. Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim, remember the Exodus from Egypt. Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit, remember the act of creation. Zecher Zechuyot Avotenu, remember the merits of our ancestors. Zochrenu L'Chaim, remember us for life. The commandment to remember looms large in the prayers we sing and the stories we are commanded to retell in every generation. To the untrained eye, it can seem as though our tradition is telling us to constantly look backward, to be stuck in a glorified past, suspended in time. However, not all memory, or at least not all uses of memory, are treated equally in our tradition. I'll never forget when I was 8 years old and went to the Dead Sea with my family for the first time. As we drove down towards the sea, to the lowest place on earth, we passed a huge sign that said, "Stone, Sodom," of biblical fame. As we drove down in our small rental car, I, in my 1980s neon t-shirt and turquoise elastic shorts and jelly sandals on my feet, my mother pointed out a large rock pillar to me. It was there that my mother said, "That's Lot's wife," a story I knew from reading my comic book Bible many times before. As many of you may recall, as Lot was fleeing from the destruction of Sodom, he told his wife, "We will be fine, just don't look back." She could not resist the urge to take one last glance of her crumbling home, and consequently was transformed into a pillar of salt. She herself became a permanent preservative. For a God that commands us so often to remember and venerate so many elements of our history, this was an extreme punishment. Why such a severe consequence? There are moments and places in time we should not revisit. The epochs and eras recalled that do not make us better. They immobilize us in some way and elicit parts of our being that draw us towards negative or unproductive choices. Another negative example of memory in the Bible comes during the Exodus, when our ancestors remembered a profoundly dishonest version of Egypt. Numbers 11, 5-6. Zacharnu et hadaga asher nochal b'mitzrayim chinam et hakishuim ve'et ha'avatichim ve'et ha'chatzir ve'et ha'betzalim ve'et ha'shumim. We remember the fish that we used to eat in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Ve'ata nafshenu yavesha in kol bilti et haman einenu. Now our gullets are shriveled. There's nothing at all, nothing but this manna to look to. Dissatisfied with the free and abundant, yet monotonous food that God was providing them on the journey from Egypt to Israel, they concocted a version of the past that elevated a life of slavery over a precarious, arduous, yet nourishing journey towards freedom. In Egypt, we all ate these delicious foods, chinam, free. Of course, free here means without paying for it, not freely as in being a free people. Because of course the food was chinam. They didn't pay for it because they didn't have any money, because they were slaves that didn't earn wages. I doubt that they were eating luxurious meals overflowing with a variety of fresh fish and verdant vegetables. But I do believe that they were dependent on masters who made life simpler, more understandable, more predictable, and most importantly, did all of the above without demanding any real accountability. Our ancestors' desire for the knownness and stability of the past, I believe, inspired their next complaint, Ata nafshenu yavesha, which can be translated as, now our gullets are shriveled, or alternatively, now our souls are dried out. I think the latter reading in our context makes more sense. Their bodies may have been redeemed from the exploitation and daily beatings, but their souls were burdened and collapsing under their newfound freedom. They preferred the partial, ossified, exaggerated memories of the past to the imperfections and unpredictability of the present and future. Their souls preferred the stability and the lack of responsibility in slavery, and the glory of an imagined past to a future during which they would be held accountable and eventually would have to attain self-sufficiency. I think the difference between the things we are positively commanded to remember on this Rosh Hashanah and the damaging recollections of Lot's wife and the freed slaves is the difference between memory and nostalgia. It is the difference connected to how and why we recall the past and how we use the past in creating or not creating a dynamic and productive future. One of the best illustrations of this difference I have seen comes from the incredible HBO series The Watchmen, based on the Marvel comic of the same name. If you haven't watched this TV show, you should, for many reasons, not the least of which, and this isn't related to my sermon, is that the superhero Dr. Manhattan is a Jewish Holocaust refugee with supernatural powers who becomes a black man for love. He ultimately saves the world with his wife, a black woman police officer who is descended from the survivors of the 1921 Greenwood Massacre against Black Americans in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is a fascinating and productive and provocative show, but what struck me the most was the role of this fictional drug invented and marketed called nostalgia. This drug was supposed to be a major success, and its inventor said that she hoped it would allow people to revisit their past, either to feel a sense of comfort as memories faded with age, or to empower everyone else to learn from their past and improve their future. However, in the end, this drug had to be pulled from the market and banned by the FDA because it turned out nostalgia was the most dangerous drug ever created. People began to overdose, reliving the past with no real purpose other than re-experiencing pain over and over and over again. Additionally, people's lives were destroyed when they took someone else's nostalgia pills and internalized the trauma and resentment of others. The inventor, Lady True, warns our hero, Angela Abar, there is nothing more dangerous than taking someone else's nostalgia. In Greek, nostalgia means the pain from an old wound. Sometimes the desire to feel pain can be seductive and strong and can lead us to relive parts of our life that don't bring us to a better future. Most of us have a voice within us that would prefer the familiar pain or exaggerated achievements of the past to the responsibility of an unwritten and uncertain future. This Rosh Hashanah, let us remember and be remembered, not for pain, not for the familiar sting of the past, but lechaim, for life. When we look back, let us do so with clear and honest eyes, knowing that everything that we grew up with probably was not as simple or kind as we remember, but also knowing that the wisdom garnered from experience and the merits of our greatest forebearers are treasures that we cannot afford to throw away. Today is the birthday of the world, a new beginning. Today is also a day of remembrance, a day of knowing that we are not starting from scratch and are accompanied on our path by our ancestors and by God. Today is also a day for hearing a call for justice, a call that is short, then broken and staccato, and ultimately stable and unending. Rosh Hashanah is all of these things at once, and at its core is a gift from Melech Chafetz B'chaim, a living God who loves life and wants us to keep on living. L'shana tova u'metuka, to a sweet and good new year.